Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Hero Movie Podcast, your greatest source for superhero movie discussion in the multiverse. I'm your host, Adam Portress, and he's wearing a flat cap as we speak. Sweet Sean Zakovacs from the internet.
Has Nikolai Volkov walked into the Hartford Civic Center? What's happening?
Bet your sweet bippy he has. Welcome back, everybody.
This is an awesome national anthem. I know I'm supposed to hate it. I don't care. I love it.
It's like, listen, we don't like a lot of the stuff you guys do, but this is a banger. Come on, how do you not feel some pride with that? That is a luscious score.
I commend you for not doing what I would have done, which is play the theme to Tetris. So good job.
Which is also quite an amazing Russian theme as well. Welcome back, everybody. It is International November, and we are starting off with Mother Russia here. With today's movie is a different one. This is a Bruce one, but yet Bruce is not here. So I'm not sure how we can really. Maybe I think he made a mistake. I think he made a mistake on this one.
I totally do. This is the greatest pick that Bruce has ever made.
Because it's
this movie. This movie is magic. This movie is the best. You know when we were trying to figure out like a couple of weeks ago, like, oh hey, like we should see The One. You know, the movie The One, remember? Yeah. And we really wanted that movie to be great, and it just wasn't. It was just a middle-of-the-road 90s action movie. It was just
like, it's all right. It could be. But...
This is the movie that I was hoping The One was. It is so freaking good. It's so good.
Today, we are covering Major Grom, Plague Doctor, that is currently available on Netflix from 2020 or 2021, depending upon where you look and who says what. But we're going to be doing all kinds of international things this November here.
So is that official International November?
Yeah.
Okay.
This way I also could, I didn't talk about what we're going to be doing next week to you before the show and everything, but I think we'll be good with what's coming up next week. Ooh, what a tease right at the top of the show.
Look, man, I need to bring this up now. I'm going to bring this up before we start the show official. Okay.
No, please.
Which is that, because I listened to the shows last week. And
we apologize.
You and Bruce make it sound like I'm handcuffing you guys from coming out with all of your really great ideas instead of what is actually happening, which is me saving you from yourselves.
Hey, listen.
Like, you guys make it sound like I'm this taskmaster and this horrible person who, like, I'm not doing that movie. That is not the way I am at all. It's literally like, Adam, stop talking about food because you sound like a stuck-up snob whenever you talk about food. Like, it's stuff like that. Like, you have the ability that when you're giving like a recommendation for food, the end of your conversation with that is usually like, why don't you throw a little paprika on there? It's like, hey, why don't you shut the hell up, dude? Nobody needs food advice from you nerd. It's like, that's what I'm talking about.
Well,
and so when Bruce is like, and Sean's gonna hate this. Sean doesn't hate superhero movies that are foreign. I love foreign movies. I just want to see good movies. The problem is Bruce is usually like, well, I was in the back of a van with this guy once, and so we should really do his movie. And I'm like, no, that movie sounds like pure garbage. No way.
Well, to be fair, we also we thought I can't speak for Bruce, but all I think either of us really knew was that A, this was from Russia, B, it had some sort of loose-ish comic book connection, and the third one. I forgot, but
you just need a third.
I need a third on there, but we just assumed it was probably crap. I think that's ultimately what I'm getting down to. I think we thought it was just going to be garbage.
Were you boys wrong? Because this is probably the best superhero movie I've seen this year. Quite honestly, that's how much I like this movie. I'm trying to think. I saw, that third Tom Holland Spider-Man movie is still better than this. Well, but yeah. I think this is the best one I've seen this year.
I could listen. I think there's definitely a case to be made there.
For sure. And, and we'll get into it when we get into the movie, because I have a couple of things that I want to point out about this movie. But the thing that I love the most is being surprised by movies. And boy, did this thing come through in spades with that.
Absolutely. But before we do get started with everything, we do want to say a giant thank you to the people that support us over at patreon.com/HMP. Those awesome people get the pre-show, post-show, and, of course, the Dinger Zone. And let me tell you, we got a pretty good Dinger Zone this week because Sean and I talk about the history, or what the future, rather, of what's coming up for our good friends over at DC, because I don't know what you heard over there. There's some things going on, a little bit of rumblings and stuff. So we're going to be checking all that out. Patreon.com/HMP. And of course, if you can't support us over at Patreon.com/HMP, why don't you buy us some Dirty Babies merch? The link for that is in the show notes, or go to the iTunes, give us a 5-star review, aka Humdinga.
Humdinga.
Holy smokes. It's been way too long, everybody. So y'all need to get on these iTunes reviews. It's been a minute. Let's get into it. Here is the trailer. I looked, the audio quality is not super great, but this is the only English dubbed trailer for Major Grom Plague Doctor that I could find. So here is the English dubbed trailer.
Good job by you.
For Major Grom.
Why are you here?
Look, I want to help you. I'm pretty sure you were set up. Tell me everything straight.
Police, wait! What's with this stupid door? Tell me, what were you doing there? Why were you there on your own?
Hey guys, do you have change for 1,000?
As a team, which is good police work. We're not partners. Is that clear?
Oh, come on, don't. We make up for each other's flaws wonderfully.
And what are my flaws exactly? Fresh. Was meowing just this morning.
Our city is sick, being devoured by the plague of corruption, greed, and lawlessness. And I shall not rest until I burn this disease to ashes. What do you think? Not too pompous?
What the hell have you done?
You wanted to make life in our city better.
Do you have any idea how many people died? How many more will die?
Alrighty, that was the trailer for Major Grom Plague Doctor. Doesn't it just roll off the tongue? You know what time it is.
It's time for Bruce's Comic Book Connection.
While Bruce isn't here this week, fear not, he has sent a comic book connection. Take it away, Bruce.
Major Grom is a Russian comic book published by Bubble Comics, Russia's largest comic publisher. Bubble Comics was founded in 2011, and the reason it is the largest publisher in Russia is that it's kind of the only comic book publisher in Russia. And when Bubble Comics launched, it featured 4 titles: Demon Slayer, but not the one you're thinking of, Friar, Red Fury, and Major Grom. Major Grom's first name is Igor, so you know that you don't forget he's Russian. And he's a police major who's known for his uncompromising attitude to crime, his honesty and integrity, as well as his detective abilities and hand-to-hand combat skills. That last sentence comes straight from Wikipedia because I've never read a Major Grom story. I'm not sure if they're very popular in the United States or not. Major Grom's first published story arc was The Plague Doctor, which did not fare well with reviewers. So naturally, this is the story arc that got adapted into a major motion picture. I mean, why adapt a critically acclaimed story when you can adapt a stinker for the same price? That's Russian economics right there. Major Grom makes for an intriguing character because he can sometimes be overly aggressive and straightforward, and he has a bit of a habit of solving complex problems with brute force, but if necessary, he is able to act with more finesse. He uses logical thinking as well as physical prowess. He always wears a cap, a gray scarf, and a brown jacket. And speaking of brown jackets, Adam, Do you have a list?
Oh, I most certainly do. If that connection wasn't enough for you, let me sell everybody on this Russian superhero-esque flick because this sucker's got everything. We got kids beating the crap out of kids, mass bank robbery with money flowing out of the back of the escape vehicle with a dude running after it on foot. Can't beat that. Bus smashing, shotgun blast to the chest, and HBO credit sequence for some reason. Flat cap, Lamborghini, whip-sipping AR glasses, giant car explosion, giant vending machines, one-handed rock cash, Russian Jesse Eisenberg playing Lex Luthor again, a giant dump, wrist flamethrower, evil Russian Jake Gyllenhaal, even evil Russian, she's not evil, but Russian Jennifer Lawrence, Russian Martin Freeman, a Memoji digital assistant lady, an evidence wall, Igor shirtless and gray sweatpants ladies. We got confetti showers, black tie, gambling, white people dancing, militant speeches, a crazy casino fight where a man's shirt stays tucked the whole time. That's beyond belief, in my opinion. The Nokia candy bar phone makes a comeback and everything. That's always good. Red Snow, suddenly a movie is an anime, a flaming shoe, waking up in another man's clothes, egg chucking, a lot of V for Vendetta, but more evil. Plague Doctor riots, a Russian David Fincher cameo. I don't know if you caught that guy. Fire hose action, holding on by a leg, group picture, an animated closing, a mid-credit sequence, and a post-credit sequence. This movie literally has everything.
It's funny because the people that you are name checking as like their Russian counterparts, I do the same thing, only I have different counterparts.
Okay.
So we'll have fun with that tonight. When you guys were talking about this last week and you just pulled this off of the pile, there was a little bit of me like, oh man, come on. But when I saw the trailer for it, I was like, well, I'm all in because this thing, like you say, has everything. It is big budget. It is terrific acting, terrific casting. The effects are practical for the most part. I mean, there's a couple of things that look bad, but you're going to get that.
No CGI bears in this one is what we're saying.
Right. You're going to get that even in a Marvel movie where you're like, "Ee, look at that." But this is great. What this felt like to me, not in quality of movie, but in practical effects, was Terminator 3. Because if you watch Terminator 3 these days, what you take away from it is, wow, that has a banger ending. But 2, I can't believe all of the practical effects in this movie.
Yeah, I mean that whole scene where like Arnold gets like smashed through that building and everything. He paid for that. They were like, we're cutting this from the script, and he's like, oh no, you are not.
That's awesome. I didn't know that.
So then they made that bit. So yeah.
And so I love this movie so much. I wanted to do a scene by scene breakdown today. When Bruce said that he wasn't going to be able to make it onto our show this week, I was like, well, then I'm definitely going to do this. So what I didn't want, I cannot sell this to you enough. I know how bad the title of this movie is.
It's an awful title.
It made me not want to see it.
Major Grom Plague Doctor does not make anybody's superhero, antenna go up. No, sir.
Right. But it is the most charming thing in the world. It is like the artistic integrity of this movie is terrific. Like you actually have a lot, like there's a lot to look at in this movie, which is great.
That's one thing that I think that really bowled me away with this is that like we've watched other Russian films for this podcast and stuff. But this has felt the closest to a Hollywood production that we've seen with a lot of these things. And like
I would say to you that this is better than about 70% of what's coming out of Hollywood.
In a lot of cases, and depending upon how you're looking at it and stuff. But yeah, there's so much that is here that is like, wow, this just seems. There's so much that's familiar, but yet very different at the same time. And I think that that's something that we really are lacking a lot of. I mean, and we're the people to talk to about it. Superhero movies is kind of what we do over here. And a lot of these things have been same old. And like, you can kind of guess where stuff's going. This was not that. I sure shooting didn't know some of the twists and turns that happened in this thing.
Man, we'll get into it. Like, let me start the blow by blow.
Oh, well, no, before you do that though, I do want to say we've got a little bit of help for some of the names of this movie as our buddy and Patreon supporter Derek Slick Nightbard here. He actually speaks fluent Russian and has given us the name of the characters and their actor counterparts.
Wow.
So our lead guy, our lead Igor, here's his character's name.
Tikhon Zhiznievsky.
Okay.
Tikhon Zhiznievsky, his actual the actor.
The actor's name.
Razumovsky.
There's a lot of Sergeys within this because like two of the main actors are named Sergey, and so that's
and a character.
That's confusing. Yeah. And then
Lyubov Aksenova.
That's
Yulia Cherkina.
So that's
well. I'm just going to let you know, like, I'm not calling them by their name at all, except for Grom. Grom is the only character that I call by name.
Why? Because the rest of them are. All right, I'll do the one more.
Because of my dumb American tongue.
Oh yeah, no, we're the guiltiest ones on that one. We'll say it. But Derek did some work here, so.
Sergei Garashko. Sergei Garashko. Sergei Razumovsky.
So even the guy that's like he's Tony Danza of Russia. He has to play this. He's Sergey and he has to play a guy named Sergey. Otherwise, he don't know that you're talking to him on set. You call him Christopher, he's gonna just ignore you until you go Sergey. Oh, okay. We're naming your character Sergey, just so you know. All right, let's break this bad boy down.
All right. So we cold open on a scene at a beach, and a dog is running for its life from three of the worst preteen boys in all of Russia because they're trying to torture and murder this dog that looks like the dog in Down and Out in Beverly Hills, a role played by our second greatest dog actor, Mike the Dog.
Mike the Dog.
That was his name.
Well, you got to name a dog something.
We salute you, Mike the Dog. The boys chase the dog into a fishing net where they're about to set the dog on fire.
Like the kids do.
Unbelievable. And another kid picks up a large rock like he's going to smash the dog in the head with the rock when a smaller boy walks up to these three future serial killers and tells him, hey, you leave that dog alone. And the little sociopath start advancing towards this much smaller boy. And we're certain the smaller boy is about to get beaten within an inch of his life when we get a title card that reads 20 years later. Kind of thankfully. There's two things I need to bring up about this cold open. One, I don't know why this is, but I kind of figured that Russian people as a whole, as a general thing, would be far more unforgiving towards their dogs. And I don't know why that is. I just did think that.
Okay, listen. Now, granted, there's a lot to, and I'm sure this is the same for everybody in all types of parts of the world and stuff. You hear things about other countries and you just assume some stuff, Yeah. But I think you're right. No, we would, if somebody said, oh, those Russian people use their dogs for fuel, you'd be like, that sounds right.
Yeah, that sounds about right. Yeah, exactly. Because,
they're bad, it's like exactly how we were raised. And the government's over there is evil. So surely they're all, burning dogs for fuel.
Oh man, Sven, your new car is fantastic. What's that run on? Dogs.
Little dog.
How many dogs per mile does it take?
28. That's the worst part. It take a lot of dogs to get to Midtown.
And so, thankfully we get to 20 years later, and I like, don't get me wrong, I'm very glad that this is here. That Russians love their dogs just as much as everyone else loves their dogs, as much as Americans love their dogs. But the second part to this is that if you want to start a movie by immediately gaining sympathy for your character, have them save a dog that's about to be brutally murdered by a group of dogs.
And if your credits don't come in quite right the first time, stall them and then have them come in later, which I thought was hilarious. I don't know why that was, but I thought it was so funny, and yet it worked.
And I have to get my licks in here. Those three boys, if they when they grow up to be adults, all three of them Teamsters.
100%.
Had to get that in there. Okay. We then smash cut to 20 years later, where we see the perfect Russian man running after a stolen Brinks truck in the streets of St. Petersburg. And that's Major Grom, our lead character, whose name translated means thunder.
Is that right?
Yeah, Major Thunder. He's got a newsboy hat on and a cool leather jacket.
By the way, I haven't wanted a brown leather jacket until forever since I've watched this movie. I'm kind of like, ooh, that's a nice looking leather jacket right there.
Well, that's an antique leather jacket that he's.
That's
got
why
on.
it's so nice because I'm like, oh, that's a good looking jacket right there.
That sucker costs a fortune,
and they probably had 5 of them.
And he appears to be gaining on the 3 guys wearing the masks. And I looked in to see if the guys who are in the Brinks truck with the masks, if that's from something, because I wanted to see if they had a backstory, but I couldn't find anything. Do you know anything about those masks that those 3 guys are wearing?
I don't, but I love the look of them. I think they're really, really great. I might even like those masks more than I like the masks in Nolan's.
Wow, really?
I think I like them even more than that, just because they're so weird.
They seem so specific that there's just got to be a history to those.
But they also look like real products.
Yes,
not like something that they made for the thing. It was just like, no, that's a real deal mask from something.
It seems like that, doesn't it?
Russian people, heromoviepodcast@gmail.com. Tell us what's up.
And so they can't believe that this guy hasn't given up, that he's still chasing after their Brinks truck. Money's flying around everywhere. And we get the first of many athletic camera moves from this movie. The cinematography in this movie, I cannot state enough, is far, far better than it has any right to be. It's amazing.
There are times in shots that go through and you're just like, why is this in this movie? It's almost like, you don't want to say it's like too good for the movie, but it feels like it in like a half a sense. You're just like, why would they be doing this much work? But they are, and it pays off really, really
and
well.
This is the first time that happens, because what happens is that you're watching Grom run after this Brinks truck down the city streets. Then the camera flips and turns, and now we're looking at the back of the Brinks truck, and the camera goes into the Brinks truck as these guys are talking to each other, and we see what's going on inside of that Brinks truck. It is amazing.
Yeah,
and I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, that's why I was thinking. That's why there were moves like that and stuff when I saw the guy who kind of looked like David Fincher in like towards the end of the movie and stuff. It was like literally like a one shot of him and a lady. I'm just like, that guy looks like David Fincher, and like a lot of these camera moves look like David Fincher camera moves.
They do, man.
I don't know if that was on purpose, but I'd like to think that it was.
These camera moves have to be so precise. I can't even imagine how much time was spent on this. And I have to say this now, right? So this movie, if you're trying to get a general feel of why I love this movie so much, this movie feels like a Sony superhero movie, just in the way that the plot runs through, because there's things where it's just like, oh, well, that's some standard stuff. That's some standard stuff. Like there's a lot of that in this movie.
Mm-hmm.
But it's if Sony was a Russian company, like that's kind of the best way to describe what this movie is.
And they
like.
leaned a little less on CGI.
Yeah.
Well, a decent less on CGI.
It has all the same beats as a Sony superhero movie. The only difference is being that the camera is doing interesting things. And since this is a Russian movie, there's certain things that catch you off guard. But this is clearly supposed to be something not only for Russians, but for an international market, because it has that feel to it where you're watching this movie and you're like, well, this is basically their version of an American propaganda superhero movie.
Yeah. Right.
Only it's from their perspective. And because of that, it is so interesting and charming and different and surprising that I really, really cannot say enough about how much I like this movie.
It's surprisingly fun. That was one thing that I don't think that I was necessarily prepared for, is just kind of how much you like the characters and you're on to whatever's going on. It's just like it's never boring. Like it's a long movie. It's 2 hours and 15 minutes, and quite frankly, I really think that they probably could have chopped off 30 minutes and still would have been fine.
Yes, they definitely could, and we'll get to it because I do bring it up.
But yeah, I just it's way more fun than I would certainly expected it to be.
Yes. So this Brinks truck headed down the road, smashes through the middle of a bus that happens to be in their way, and they get stuck inside the middle of it with the Brinks truck. And what makes all of this insanely cool is that it's all a practical effect.
Yeah, they drove a bus through, or a armored car through a bus, and like it's there.
Man, it's awesome. And then Grom jumps inside of the Brinks truck, and while it's in the middle of the bus. And this is the part of the movie that confused me at first, because it isn't made totally clear in the beginning.
Oh yeah,
but the criminals shoot him in the chest and he dies, and we see Grom's funeral where Grom wakes up in the casket and he says, think, think, think. And we cut back to the back of the Brinks truck where Grom is now alive again and taking down the criminals in a totally different way. And I got to be honest, Adam, like I had to think, I thought for about half of the movie that Grom had a superpower where he could jump back in time a few minutes, changing the events of what happened, you know?
Yeah, oh, yeah. Like, because again, I think it's ultimately a good thing, but they don't hold your hand with it and tell you that, like, oh, this is what it is, and blah, 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 blah.
Yeah, totally.
Think about it for those, just kind of an outside reference for people. In the Guy Ritchie Sherlock movies,
that's
right?
exactly my note, is that it's exactly like the Guy Ritchie Sherlock Holmes.
So you're going through and it's just like, oh, this, I'm going through all the options. But the cool thing about this one is, as opposed to like him just thinking all these things and saying, oh, I'm going to do this, or I could do blah, 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 blah. We literally show it. And then we show so many different options of those things. And it goes along as different fights happen. It never feels like it's overdone.
No,
which is nice.
No, they use it sparingly, but they do use it.
But it's a way, and there's an awesome moment where he doesn't get to use it.
Yes,
which is really, really smart, and something that I just was like, oh, this movie is a lot smarter than you might give it credit for right off the bat, because they wouldn't
because he doesn't have enough time to do it. It's a really nice,
surprisingly
really nice turn. Yeah. Yeah, so he's like, as all of this is happening, as this fight is happening, in the background, the soundtrack that's playing, as like he keeps fighting them in different ways, the soundtrack that's playing, it can be best described as the Russian Ramones.
Yeah, is
playing. And let me tell you something: if you're going to start a band, you could do way worse than the name the Russian Ramones.
Yeah, I mean, listen, they had Rocket to Russia as an album, so why not, bro? Do it. It's there.
Yeah. So then he gets thrown out of the truck. Grom gets thrown out of the truck, and he steals a garbage truck, and he uses that to slam into the Brinks truck, saving the day. But when he does this, he destroys the St. Petersburg Square, the Brinks truck, the garbage truck, and a statue that's just been unveiled right in front of his boss, who is the same actor that's in Day Watch and Night Watch, and he looks a little bit like Russian Bob Hoskins.
Oh, yeah, okay.
And one of the criminals crawls over to Major Grom and asks the rated R version of this question, "Who are you, soccer player?" And Grom knocks him the hell out. And we get the sweet title card, Major Grom, the Plague Doctor. And all of that happens in like the first 10 minutes of this movie.
It's unreal how much stuff happens in this thing. It is so fast. It is so furious. But it's just like, oh, we're on to this new thing. And then, like you said, that's just the start. That's the cold open to this thing, essentially.
Yeah. It's incredible. And so after the credits, we then start following around a new recruit named Dubin to the St. Petersburg police force. And the background music is joyous, hopeful, filled with violins. He's young and he's nerdy. And you know he's nerdy because he's wearing glasses. And the cop that's showing him around is giving him the business with jokes like mispronouncing his name. And we're supposed to hate this cop immediately. And it's a point that they drive home with him saying things like, you need to lighten up and you really need to work on your sense of humor, and generally just the type of things that make you want to punch this guy in the face immediately.
Yeah.
And as Dubin is being walked around, he's bumping into people, knocking things over, and he's wearing New Balance shoes just to ram home the fact that he's a nerd. And he looks like Elon Musk before the hair plugs and the HGH.
Yeah.
Like those before photos of him.
It's like, oh, back in the PayPal days.
Right, exactly. And we get the first of many Russianisms in this movie where a guy who's brought into the precinct, he says, "Oh, we don't go to jail for domestic violence here." And the cop who's brought him in says, "But you beat up your neighbor." To which the perp responds with, "Well, he's like a brother to me."
So it's fine.
And to me, this is where the charm of this movie really shines through, where you will never see that in an American movie ever again. But domestic violence is totally fine here within your own home. Like, it's so strange and great, and it's something just so cripplingly Russian. It's so good.
It's like, what do you mean? Why?
It's so good. But then we finally land on what I am quite sure is Bruce's favorite character in this movie. And it's a guy that I will lovingly refer to as morbidly obese cop.
Oh, yeah. That guy's great.
He is. He's awesome. And he keeps showing up like over and over again. We're like, oh, yeah, I forgot about that fat guy. I totally forgot about him. And there's also a running theme throughout this entire movie where people keep trying to high five each other or handshake, and everybody keeps like missing, or like pulls it away just at the last second.
Oh yeah, basically it was just like, you remember the things that you did when you were 6? Adults are doing that now. Too slow.
And it's literally all throughout the movie. Like, I mean, it happens so many times that like you just become numb to the fact that that happens, because it happens no less than 10 times in this movie where people pull their hand away, or I'm not going to high five you. Like, that happens all throughout this movie.
Oh, you didn't hear? Russia just got 1996.
So as nerdlinger Elon Musk is being shown around the precinct, the boss shows up, who is Russian Bob Hoskins. And he yells out that he wants to see Grom in his office because he's so mad at Grom. And the cops start betting if Grom is finally going to be kicked off the force. And morbidly obese cop bets against Grom. And so does the rest of the force. But we all know that Grom's not getting fired because he's the best damn cop in St. Petersburg.
And the movie would be over in 25 minutes if we were just like, well, he's going home now. That's it. The end.
And I'll be honest with you, if that's where the movie ended, it still would have been one of the best superhero movies I've seen this year.
Not bad.
But we do learn a few things. Like, not only does Grom not follow the rules, but he also never, and I mean never, carries his service weapon with him.
You don't want to make it uneven for everybody else out there.
I mean, he's just such a bad egg. And we learn that Grom needs to learn how to work as part of a team because he's such a lone wolf. It's called character development, people. Maybe you've ever heard of it. And, I mean, it's the kind of thing that they always set up for someone like Grom, where like, well, we can't make him perfect. Maybe he, isn't good with people.
Yeah. Now he's kind of like but at the same time too, like, even though he's kind of a jerk in a lot of ways, you always like Grom. You can't not.
Oh, for sure, man. But I mean, the actor is doing a lot of that work too. I think.
Yeah. There's something about that dude. Like, he's overly handsome, but not in a way that you want to punch him.
Right. Exactly. He looks like, the Russian version of what Harrison Ford looked like in the 70s, where you're like, man, that guy is the most handsome man in the world, but I still want to hang out with him. Like that guy.
Yeah, exactly. It's just like, oh, I bet that guy's cool, Yeah.
Yeah. And then we cut to a news broadcast and we learn that there's the son of a billionaire who killed a girl in a traffic accident, and that guy's on trial. But the girl isn't just your average innocent child. No. She's an orphan. And I can't say this enough. The actor they have playing the billionaire's spoiled son has the type of face you just want to see him hurt.
Oh, he's beyond punchable, that guy.
It is maybe the most physical violence you've ever wanted to perform on someone just by the way their face looks. The casting of this character is amazing. I'm sure the actor is the nicest dude in the world because you kind of have to be if you look like that.
Yeah.
But my God, you want this guy, to hurt. The second you see him, you want him to hurt.
And if you don't, just wait till he shows you his vending machines. Then you really want to hurt him. You're like, what?
Well, that's not, they're not his vending machines. We'll meet him later.
Okay.
Yeah. And that's, and it's a different character who has the vending machine. So we learn that not only, and this is where I mean where it's like a Sony movie, because it's like, wow, that's super convenient. But like we learn that Grom was the guy who took in this billionaire's son who killed an orphan because he was drunk with his car. Like we learned that it was Grom who took him in, which is just amazing. And not only is the billionaire's son unrepentant, but he seems to believe that running over that orphan girl in his Lamborghini is one of the best ideas he's ever had. That's the way he's behaving during this whole trial. And there's an orphan boy who's testifying against the billionaire's son. And we get our second great Russianism here, because as he's testifying, he says that he and the girl were on a field trip visiting drawbridges.
You know, like you do.
and listen, that's about as Russian as it gets. We're going to go see all the drawbridges in St. Petersburg, kids. Let's go.
They all have two functions, up and down, up and Adam, down. You can watch them go forever.
I am certain, because I know the town that you grew up in. Mm-hmm. What is the worst field trip you ever had? And before you finish, before you start, remember, you have the perfect ending if there's no finish to this story.
Okay. Well, I will say this. The most memorable one is I come from a small little town that, like, we'll say at this point, 30 years ago, it was already, kind of downfalling a little bit 30 years ago, but it was a giant mill town. Had a like the Springs manufacturing plant and stuff, so they're making all kinds of textiles and things of that nature and stuff. So we went to the Springs plant to go through and to look at all the stuff. I find all that stuff fascinating. Everyone else hated it because I just, I like seeing all behind the scenes stuff. All the, to me that stuff's cool. But our teacher, who was I forget her name, but she looked at everybody and she just goes, "Hey, y'all," because everybody, you're in middle school. You're going to be a little bit, riled up and everything.
Sure.
She goes, "Hey, all of y'all need to sit down and be quiet because every single one of you are going to be working here." And I was just like,
"Oh my God, that's awful."
To which, even in like 7th grade, I was just like, "Not me." I was like,
nope.
Ain't no way. I was just like, I like looking at all this stuff, but I will not work here. I will not do any of these. This is not, no. What's wrong with you? And I just like, it felt like it just was so mean to me that she's just like, all of y'all are going to be working. I'm like, oh, no, I will not. And it turns out no one will work there because they shut the whole damn thing down.
Yeah, they sure did. And a couple of those buildings too, the manufacturing buildings, the owners of those buildings were like, maybe I just burn it to the ground and collect the insurance money.
Who knew?
So we learned pretty quickly during this trial with the billionaire son that no justice is going to be served today because the billionaire son has bought off the forensics team and the judge. And as he gets off scot-free, the billionaire son literally blows a kiss to the judge. And everyone's outraged, including Grom, but he leaves and heads back to his apartment. And now we got to talk about Grom's apartment here. Mm-hmm. Because it's a mix of what I like to think is the Crow's apartment and Hugo from the movie Hugo, who lived inside of that mall clock, if I'm remembering correctly.
Yeah, it's down at the train station and everything. Yeah.
Right. It's a train station, right? And Hugo lives inside the clock where he gets to see where everybody's going.
Right.
And that's basically where Grom lives.
Yeah, pretty much.
And what makes it like the Crow's apartment is that it's gothic looking and impossibly large for a cop in St. Petersburg. And
there's
what
only
makes it
like a half a lemon in the refrigerator.
Right. And what makes it more like Hugo's is that he has a massive picture window and he can just monitor the whole city from there, even though he's a poor cop who never has any money.
Yeah.
Or even money for food. So we learned that Grom has a perfectly working Nokia brick phone in this scene.
Beautiful.
Where he pulls out his brick phone and you're like, man, that thing is awesome. And like you get a little jealous when you see it because it's like mint condition Nokia brick phone.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a great character prop because, I'm wondering, one, like it's a choice, right? It's definitely a choice, but what is his monthly cell phone bill, you think?
$15.
like 15-20 bucks American for keeping that Nokia going.
Yeah, hey, listen, still gets to play Snake though.
It is.
He's got that going for him.
I remember playing Snake on that phone. So he cross-cut this fact that he's got his Nokia brick phone with the biggest media network in Russia getting ready for a big announcement. And that's when we meet Sergey, who is a tech genius that looks exactly like Evan Peters. Quicksilver from the X-Men.
Yeah, he does.
And American Animals. He looks exactly like him. And he's nervous, and he's being consoled by his friend Oleg, who looks exactly like young Rasputin. and young Rasputin's telling him things like, this is your life's work. You're going to do great. And we start the press conference with Evan Peters. And this is another great shot in the movie because the filmmakers don't make it look like it's an Apple event, kind of like the Tony Stark Expo and Iron Man 2. Mm-hmm. It more looks like its own kind of thing. Like there's a touch of Apple keynote, but there's a lot more, like it's a lot stranger than that. Like he's standing in the middle of like what looks like the lobby at MoMA. Yeah. Except it's all dark and black and awesome looking. And it's just an amazing use of space. And what makes it so great is that you don't have to fill up with tens of thousands of people because everything is, like ribboning up to the sky. It's pretty awesome.
Yeah.
And it's one of those things too, where you're like, man, they really are really smart, these filmmakers, because it looks correct. Like when you're watching this keynote, you're like, man, this really looks like authentic, even though there's probably 30 people in that room. Like it's really, really well done and really well put together. And anyway, so Evan Peters is telling us about his new plan for Russian internet freedom, which is called Together 2.0, which means you can go anywhere on the internet anonymously, and it's all totally free and it's all totally legal. But we already know that something is up with Evan Peters, because if you've seen any movie in the last 30 years, you know that the filmmakers aren't showing you a tech billionaire just because he's awesome.
Yeah, it's never been like, and he's the best person ever. It's usually like, oh, he seems to have all the best solutions. Dum bum bum.
Exactly. And so during the conference, it becomes public knowledge that the billionaire's son has been set free, which bothers Evan Peters, and he runs off stage and he talks to his buddy Oleg, complaining about how there's no justice in St. Petersburg. And that's when young Rasputin says, oh, there will be justice. I can promise you that.
I love that guy.
And like, I want to say this dude really, really looks like young Rasputin. Like he looks enough like younger Rasputin where it's like if Yahoo Serious made a movie in the 90s called Young Rasputin, he would look exactly like this character looks in this movie.
Yeah, I think that's apt. I think that's
apt. We then go back to Major Grom, who's making some kind of food with Bob Hoskins at Bob Hoskins' house. Are they dumplings or something?
I don't know.
Because I don't know. Oh, so you don't know?
No idea.
Oh, okay. Well, because my hatred of food is well documented. So I was hoping that maybe you knew.
Oh, you don't know about Russian blukanovs? Yeah, that's a shame for you.
So as they're making, we'll call them dumplings. As they're making dumplings.
Russian gnocchi.
There you go, Russian gnocchi. As they're making Russian gnocchi, Grom is saying how there's no real justice in St. Petersburg. The system is rotten, and Bob Hoskins tells him it's not their job to be Judge Judy and executioner. And we learn that Bob Hoskins and Grom are related, and he brings his clothes to Bob Hoskins' wife to mend them. and he has dinner at their house all the time.
Russia's a very different country. They have different cultures and different things that we do here, and it's our job to look at other people's ways of life and go, that's fine.
I guess so. I guess. And Bob Hoskins starts asking Grom why he doesn't have a girlfriend, and all that he ever does is work. And that's when Bob Hoskins' wife, who is way, and I mean not only way out of his weight class, but she's also younger than him by like no less than 15 years, like easily 15 years. And that's when Bob, and she says that when Bob Hoskins was younger, he was the exact same way. He worked too much, and that all he ever cared about was his motorcycle and work.
Yeah, you know.
So that's right. Save that for later. So then Grom gets a phone call from the orphanage saying that orphan that testified against the billionaire's son hasn't been back in a couple of days, and she's worried about him. And then we cut to the billionaire's son getting thrown out of his own window in his own home. And we finally meet the plague doctor for the first time, and he is beating the living crap out of this billionaire kid. And it is so satisfying. I can't even tell you how wonderful it is seeing this man beaten to within an inch of his life. It is so unbelievably satisfying. Remember that feeling you got at the end of Once Upon a Time in Hollywood when, when Brad Pitt goes, just how satisfying that moment is.
Yep.
This is sort of the same thing. Not all the way, not 100%, but it's the same. We're in the same ballpark right now.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so he's getting beat up, right? The kid's getting beat up, and he tries to get away in his Lamborghini. And the plague doctor torches him alive in his own car using his awesome, just totally awesome Mandalorian wrist flamethrowers. Yeah, and while the special effect of the Lamborghini getting blown up wasn't so good, the plague doctor's costume is awesome.
Yeah.
Like, it's a really, really good costume.
And the cool part about it too is that like they clearly took a long time designing it, putting it together and everything. I love the fact that they've even gone down so far as to just making the iconography for it, right?
Yes.
So when everybody else kind of, jumps onto the plague doctor train and everything, making those masks. And I like the idea that, no, it's just like, Halloween where it's like, oh, these masks are available at any 5 and dime store kind of thing, to where
because they even
get those. And
right. They even try to hunt that down where that mask came from. And they're like, look, it's everywhere.
Everybody
it's 99
has all
cents.
that sort of stuff, but like really great design on the costume. It doesn't look like it's super indicative of a whole bunch of other things, which is nice and rare to see, because you don't look at that and just go like, I mean, maybe Batman. You could say Batman, but like not really. Not because of the hood and the way that the tech works on this thing. Yeah, it's like very different. So you wouldn't say Batman's the closest you would think, but it ain't Batman for sure.
No, it's like Boba Fett and Darth Vader and Batman. Like it's like a mix of those three things.
Which feels like this whole thing feels like, and not in a bad way, but it feels like a greatest hits of so many things. There's so many, it feels like it's pulling from so many different elements of comic book movies and sci-fi and action films and stuff that like, it still keeps it fresh. While it's stuff we've seen before, it's stuff we've seen before in a way we haven't necessarily been given that, that material before. And that's what I think I like about it, is that like, while it's the same, it feels fresh, and that's rare. That's a tough thing to do, I think. Yeah.
Oh man. This really is, this thing just surprised me over and over and over again, and like, and this, we're at the scene, which is the first of many surprises for me. Which is that, because I thought that Grom was going to be the plague doctor. Like they were setting it up like he was about to be the plague doctor,
Right.
But he's not, because Grom shows up because he's looking for the orphan, and he shows up at the billionaire kid's house because he's like, the kid might be here. But Grom shows up and he does that Sherlock Holmes think thing where he thinks about events before they happen again. And he picks up a rock to hit the plague doctor in the back of the head. But when he does throw it, Plague Doctor catches it without turning around. And this is one of the things that is like, it's a knock against this movie, which is that they never explain how he was able to do that.
He's just good. He's just that good.
He's the best. He's the absolute best. And the Plague Doctor,
they just needed to cut to some lady just going, oh my God, he is the best.
Wow. Yeah. Yeah, like Russian Owen Wilson is like standing around. Wow.
Wow, that's pretty great.
Wow. So the plague doctor could easily take out Grom, but he doesn't want to because he's not there for Grom. And the plague doctor vanishes. So we cut to back at the police station. Grom's taking flack from the other cops. Both cop you want to hate and morbidly obese cop are there. And we get another great Russianism here where they say, does he look anything like this? And they show Grom a picture of a blue character that's clearly from Russian lore. But I have no idea what this thing is.
Does he look like Papa Smurf?
And cop you want to hate says, there's only one problem. He's immortal. And all the other cops are laughing. Oh, they're laughing. And I have no idea what they're referring to. And again, it just adds to the charm of the movie that I have no clue what they're referring to here. And I love it. I love that I don't know.
It's like the Russian Gandalf or something. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, it's got to be something from like their mysticism, like lore or whatever. I don't have any idea. I love that I don't know. But if you do know the answer to this, let us know. Yeah. Sir Derek the Nightbard, like Slick Derek the Nightbard, you like, if you know, let us know, man. But I do love that I don't know what it is. And so they're really laying into Grom when Bob Hoskins shows back up. Give me a second. I'm sorry.
All right.
Woo. That time of year.
The plague doctor is in the house.
It's just that time of year, man. So they're really laying into Grom when Bob Hoskins shows up and makes him scatter. And he tells Grom that they found the missing orphan and that there was no evidence left by the plague doctor. And we learn that the nerdy trainee can draw at this point because he wants to be Grom's partner. And Bob Hoskins tells Nerdlinger that Grom don't need no help. And Grom interviews the missing orphan. Grom knows that the kid isn't the plague doctor, but wants to know if he knows anything at all, to which the kid says, yes, the plague doctor is the real hero. And this is where I think things would go if Batman was real, like people would be like, oh man, that's great. Like if there was a guy, not like Batman, but like a guy that was like running around murdering criminals in real life, I am pretty sure it would be like a 50-50 split of people like, awesome. We are so glad that you killed that guy.
Oh, yeah.
And people like, we don't want to, which is what, it's kind of what makes the Dark Knight Rises work. And it's what makes this movie work is that you can totally see like 50% of the population going, that's our guy.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
And boy, oh boy, does this movie has a lot of Dark Knight Rises in it. It has a lot of V for Vendetta, like you said at the beginning, like there is a whole lot of that stuff. And Grom walks out of the interrogation room and morbidly obese cop says, open and shut case. Orphan is the plague doctor. To which Grom says, shut your mouth, fatty. Sit down, fat boy. Go eat more pie, stupid. And he walks away.
I guess I gotta go.
He literally does say to the guy, go eat more pie, stupid. He does literally say that to him. And we see something we very rarely get to see in cop movies or detective shows, which is actual research being done by Grom. He's drinking tons of coffee. There's a montage of him looking onto the internet about how to make a flamethrower and other references to crimes committed by the plague doctor. And he's done so much work over this past day that everyone else has gone home and he hasn't even noticed, where he finally decides to head home.
Never been that guy. Can't be that guy. I don't know why. I don't want to be like that. Well, I've been here first in, last out. I'm like, all right, you're trying too hard. Come on.
No comment from me. As Grom is going home, he sees a woman being accosted outside of his apartment. So he saves her and he takes her to his apartment to help. And this walk home, this is one of the most heroic walk homes I've ever seen, because within 30 seconds, we see Grom give a stray dog part of his burrito. At least I think it's a burrito.
Yeah.
And then within 30 seconds, he helps this lady. And as he's walking up to these two guys hurting the woman, he says the line, hey, girls, step away from her, or do I need to call an ambulance? Which is something you would never, ever, ever hear said in an American movie.
Can't do that anymore.
And yes, it's totally culturally insensitive. I get it to say something like that. I totally get it. But Grom, totally the type of dude who would say something like that.
And could get away with it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I thought we were going to have a winner for World's Worst Wig Award in this movie, but because of this scene. But it turns out that was the entire point, that the lady getting accosted is actually a reporter trying to dig up dirt on the plague doctor. And she steals a bunch of evidence from Grom when she's in his apartment, when his back is turned. And then when she walks out, she takes off her wig. And that's when I realized that she looks a lot like the girl from Run, Lola, Run.
Yeah, there's a little bit of that going on.
And
especially with
not
that
only,
hair.
yeah, oh man, the hair is the reason why I say it. And not only was the reporter not in any actual danger because she had paid those guys to make it look like she was being mugged, but also when they turn on her for telling her they need more money, she completely beats the crap out of these guys herself, which is a good bit of business in this movie that is telling you more about the character than you would think a movie like this would say.
Mm-hmm.
It's just surprising all the time, this movie. And we go back to Evan Peters' tech genius's office, where he's going through social media to see what people are saying about the death of the billionaire's son. And we get another awesome piece of Russian culture when someone posts the line, "You had it coming, CIA druggie." Now, Adam, I think I know what this means. Do you have any idea of what this means?
I mean, okay, the CIA and other three-letter agencies have often been known to be running drugs in a whole lot of things. Some also suggest that that's a lot of reasons why we still kept in Afghanistan for as long as we did. We were looking over poppy fields as opposed to actually doing anything, constructive. So maybe there's a little bit of some of that coming in there.
Maybe that's it.
I don't know. That's it. That's my best guess.
That was basically my guess too. So we're in Evan Peters' office when who should show up but the plague doctor. And just when you think something is going to happen to Evan Peters, the plague doctor takes off his mask and he reveals that he's actually Evan Peters' best friend, young Rasputin. Now, Adam, did you see this coming, that young Rasputin was going to be the plague doctor?
No, I didn't.
Nor did I.
That was one of the things where it was just like there's several times in this movie where, like I said, we're seeing a lot of things that we've seen before. So you think you're like, oh, okay, this is going to be, and then they take a little left turn on you every now and then, and you go like, oh, well, you know what? You're a lot smarter than I would have given you credit for.
It's just such a great turn because he looks absolutely positively evil. So for him to be the plague doctor makes total sense to me.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh man, that's really great. Like, that's a really great way to do this. Because, it takes the emphasis off of this tech billionaire. Like, of course, there's something sneaky with the tech billionaire, but having it be his best friend that's the problem is just really a really nice turn, in my opinion.
Yeah, it's different.
Yeah. And so Evan Peters and young Rasputin have an argument over what justice actually is, and that he had to use a bunch of Evan Peters' money to buy his plague doctor suit. And this is when young Rasputin actually says the line, "Now I'm like Batman, except Batman doesn't kill. I'm way cooler.
Because I kill people." That's so great.
In case anyone had any questions about the type of movie you're watching, you are, in fact, watching a superhero movie. Although
it's killing
a
Batman.
Very strange one, which is why I love it so much. This thing is so strange. Then Bane starts to take over St. Petersburg for a while, and the plague doctor starts putting his message out on social media, and he kills a lady that's in charge of a corrupt bank, and he does it live on streaming, and everyone, for the most part, seems totally on board with this.
There's a lot of townspeople, for lack of a better term, that are very down with anything that the plague doctor does.
Yes. Yep. Like, absolutely.
Like no questions, anything. It's like the plague doctor's doing it. It's good. Chalk it up as a good one.
And then, so after the crime has happened, Grom shows up at the crime scene, And this is when we get a guy that looks like Lenin with giant fake teeth. And he shows up, and he clearly works for Moscow, and he hates Grom, and he's smiling that kind of smile that never hits his eyes. Like, the actor is doing a really good job with his like fake smile because it never hits his eyes. And he's everything you want in your government stooge for your movie. And he tells Grom that now he's off the plague doctor case because now it's a national thing. And Grom, you're gone.
No one takes me off my beat.
What did you think? What did you think of this guy, the fake teeth Lenin?
Hey, listen, the teeth are the best part of the whole darn thing, I think. But
Yeah.
Listen, it's good. I'm trying to figure out where this movie absolutely had me at. But like,
I will tell you, because I'll tell you where it had me, and I'm almost certain it's the same exact moment. Because you know, as much as we differ taste wise, I know that we're big fans of what I'm about to bring up in a couple minutes here, and I'm almost certain of it.
Okay.
So Grom gets put on a new case with the rookie nerdlinger, a case where 12 refrigerators are missing, which is like, you could not be on a more boring case.
What an odd subplot for everything was the 12 refrigerators.
It's so strange, man. And so they go to a part of town that's basically a landfill, and clearly the worst part of St. Petersburg, because Grom wants some answers about the plague doctor, and he's doing it on the sly. And so he asks Russian Huggy Bear for some information. And as Grom is getting information from Russian Huggy Bear, Nerdlinger is stuck outside the door as they're having their meeting. And just when you think Nerdlinger is about to get beat up by these huge dudes, he isn't, because he's an artist and he draws pictures of all these biggest, baddest dudes, and they all want drawings from Nerdlinger. And they all become friends, and it's a great moment and not what you'd expect, like, at all.
And especially coming as someone that grew up drawing and everything, let me tell you something. That ain't getting you out of nobody giving you a whooping. It ain't happening. It's just not. It's like, hey, let me draw a caricature of you or something. Like, no, it's not going to happen. So, like,
I just thought it was really neat.
Oh, it's not. It's great, but it's also just like, oh, what fanciful world are we living in here? I believe the wrist flamethrower before that.
So Grom gets the names of a bunch of guys that might know something about the plague doctor, and this is where we get to my absolutely favorite part of this movie. So Grom is trying to get information on the plague doctor from scumbags across St. Petersburg. And it is a montage scene. And not only is the montage scene funny, but because there's a moment where he goes to kick in a door, and instead of the door flying open, his foot just goes through, and he has to climb through the hole his foot just made.
That was pretty good.
And not only is everything perfectly cut together, so you know exactly what's happening at every moment of this montage, but the camera is moving 360 degrees from floor to ceiling.
Mm-hmm.
And so every single time he's interrogating a new person, it looks like they're flipping the sets over. And so you go from scene to scene to scene. And it is the coolest. I can't even imagine the director trying to explain to the stupid camera people, because camera people are idiots. Like, this is what I want it to look like. And then going, right? What? You wanted to go 360 degrees? I don't get it. And he's like, just trust me, this is going to work. And they're like, I'll do it, but you know, it's not going to, like, I can totally see them doing that. Because you have to have the vision in your head of what all of this montage looks like. And it's brilliant, and it's by far my favorite part of the movie.
And I'm not sure what they're using, but it's when you start to see a lot of the new rigs and camera rigs and stuff that people are putting out these days, and how some of them work, like just these long booming steady cams that also have gyroscope rotation on the camera itself. So it is like some of the wildest stuff out there. I don't know what they were using on this one, but technology is making it so we can have some really absolutely insane shots these days. It's great.
And not only are these shots amazing, because and that would be enough, like just how thoughtful and artistic this whole sequence is, but because you're watching a vastly superior movie to most superhero movies, they do this thing where Grom is getting visibly more upset the more people he tries to interview for answers, and no one has any answers. And so the more they move along, the more violent everything gets from him. And it's all still very funny, but it ends with a guy on fire and Nerdlinger has to put him out with a fire extinguisher. And it is such a nice bit of storytelling, and it's small, and you would never notice it if you're only half paying attention to this movie. Luckily for me, this is a movie where I never looked at my phone because it's just so well crafted and well done. This movie, I love this movie so much.
Yeah, it's one of those, every time you turn, there's like something else that's like, oh, okay, what now? All right, this is a little bit different. It's just, there's always a little something to grab your attention for that scene to kind of push you through that scene to the next one even.
Yeah. And, and we end all of this very athletic camera moves and storytelling. And we end up interviewing Evan Peters, tech genius guy, and he's wearing a shirt that says in English, single, taken, busy fighting dragons with little boxes. And like, of course, the check mark is busy fighting dragons. And I now have another Christmas present for my oldest daughter. Like instantly, I was like, oh, bam, perfect. And this is where that weird piece of set dressing comes from, Adam, is that when we're in Evan Peters' office, he has 4 floor to ceiling vending machines.
I love the reason he has them.
Yeah.
I was poor and I couldn't do anything. Now you have vending machines?
Well, I mean, that's how poor he was.
Okay. I mean, like, if that's the height of your money's now is that you can get a bag of Funyuns and have it drop from 10 feet above you. I mean, I suppose that's all well and good. Does he have to still pay for it, or because he just put in like A11 and then something pops out?
My guess is he wanted the full experience. He's got to put the coins in.
Yeah. Oh, gosh. He's just got like, rolls and rolls of quarters in his desk.
Probably. I mean, I would imagine. I mean, if that's the reason why he has them in his office.
The worst part is he sets his own prices, and some of them are still like $2, and he's got to put in like 8 quarters.
Why do I do this to myself?
This seems like Greg should make everything a quarter, shouldn't it? I mean, it's my stuff.
But I mean, that's also the origin story for my Adidas collection, is that I couldn't have Adidas when I was a kid. I mean, it's the same thing.
Yeah.
Same principle.
But at least those are shoes that you can wear out to public as opposed to 10-foot vending machines. But
it's true. It's true.
One has a better function than the other, I would think.
But again, this is yet another thing that is just another piece of character development, like it's the difference between this movie and like Morbius, we're not just doing something because it's cool.
The one of the glass on one of the vending machines there broke at some point. I wildly disappointed Grom didn't go over and get like a bag of rolled gold or something and just kind of start chomping down. It would have made sense. It would have worked. It was sitting right there, eating a Milky Way, whatever. I don't care.
Man, I mean, there's just again, I cannot heap enough praise on this movie. And so Grom asks if he can get some information on the Plague Doctor's video that he the Plague Doctor had uploaded, and Evan Peters tells Grom that he can't because everything is decentralized and encrypted. To which Grom says, another great piece of character development here. You wanted freedom of speech, and instead you gave a serial killer a pulpit with a microphone. And that tells you so much about this character, about who this character is, that like if you were kind of trying to figure out what this character is exactly about, this is literally the moment where you know exactly who Grom is.
Yeah.
And that's why I just love that scene, and I love that line. And we get something else important here, which is that Evan Peters understands at some point during this questioning that Grom isn't supposed to be there. And he says that'll cover for him. He's like, look, I want this guy caught too. You know, like, and again, it's one of the, it's very subtle, but it's one of those things that's telling you, one, this guy is incredibly smart, and two, that he wants the right thing to be done.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's just tremendous. Again, you're not going to get this in Venom 2.
Whoa, hey, pump the brakes there.
Sorry, looks good on you though. So then Grom goes back to the police station, and Nerdlinger shows him the video of the reporter that streams video on YouTube, I guess. Is that where she is?
I
She's
feel like it's a
famous?
Russian YouTube kind of thing. It's YouTube, but it is, but it isn't, maybe.
Right. And Nerdlinger keeps saying how she's super famous, but no one seems to recognize her whenever she's on the street.
With her fiery red hair.
Like no one ever recognizes her. And you know, she's drop dead gorgeous, this girl. Like how come no one like is like, oh my Lord, like that woman is stunning and has this bright hair.
Yeah, you'd see the hair, and then you'd see the lady in the hair, and you'd be like, everyone would be looking at this girl.
Oh, hey, she's from Russian YouTube. She's that reporter from Russian. Like none of that happens ever in this movie, which is another very small strike against this movie. So Grom breaks into the reporter's house because he's like, oh, she's a reporter. He didn't know who she was. So he goes to the reporter's house. He's a cop. He knows where everybody lives in St. Petersburg. So he goes to her house, and he very creepily just hangs out until she shows up, and he's like listening to like children's music or something.
It's weird.
It's super weird. It's super creepy. And he tells her that he now knows who she is, and he destroys her laptop, and he leaves. And this is when the plague doctor kills a guy who's been poisoning the town with his landfill in the crappy part of town. And the plague doctor also kills this guy's entire family. And this is the moment of the movie where you're watching Michael Douglas and Falling Down, and you're like, this guy makes a whole lot of sense, and then he doesn't make sense anymore.
And then it's just like, oh, well, there you go. You went a little too far now.
And this is the moment where the plague doctor doesn't make much sense anymore. Like, I mean, plague doctor's burning that little fat kid. I mean, come on.
He's going nuts.
Yeah, he's a little Lord Volteroy, but I mean, the kid's like 8. I mean, what are you going to do? You know? And so Evan Peters tells young Rasputin that he's gone too far because he's killed the landfill guy's entire family. And there are people in the streets who are trying to be more like the plague doctor. And this is when Evan Peters threatens to cut young Rasputin off. But young Rasputin calls Evan Peters' bluff. And this is the moment in the movie where, like, if you're going to cut some time from this movie, because it is very long.
Yeah.
This is the moment where you start cutting, because this is the casino scene. This is what we get next. And while the casino scene is cool,
at least it gives us a good action scene. We do have that.
It does. It is cool, but you don't need it to be there. You know, you don't really learn anything new. You don't, and it is a great scene, but the movie is 2 hours and what was it, 15 minutes?
Something like that, yeah.
I mean, it's crazy long, man. And so, like, to cut down that time, this is the scene that you cut. And, you know, there's a lot of flash, and, you know, everybody's dressed up and everybody looks great. And the crowd almost kills Evan Peters in the casino, but Grom saves him. And then Grom gets caught at the casino by Lenin with the fake teeth, smiling Lenin from Moscow. And this is when Grom gets fired from the force, because smiling Lenin has him fired.
Get out of this office.
Yes, it was going to happen. It's that kind of movie.
Yeah.
Again, it's a Sony movie, but through a Russian lens. Like,
Once-
that's literally the movie you're seeing.
Yeah, once you've gotten to a particular point, this is bound to happen, and that's what's going to lead to the next thing.
And having such a like by the beat plot works when there are two or three things that you're not really like comprehending really quickly when you're watching a movie like this. Where, because the culture is so vastly different from our culture, because their reference points are so different, it's kind of nice to know, okay, so this is the chief of police and he's mad at Grom. Like having those beats there is nice.
Yeah, at least establishes stuff.
Yes, because you can at least follow along fairly easily, and then something out of the blue, like they show you a picture of some blue guy with wings from Russian lore, and you're like, what am I looking at? What is that?
Huh? Is that a
Like
Simpsons character? What is this?
It's right, and it kind of helps that it's kind of beat by beat. And so Grom goes to see what's happening with that orphan that testified at the beginning of the movie, and he learns that the orphanage that orphan has been staying at is the same orphanage that Evan Peters and young Rasputin stayed at when they were children.
Wait a second. I saw Morbius.
This is where, well, again, that's what made me think of Sony, that this is a Sony movie, is literally that moment. And this is where Grom puts two and two together. And clearly, young Rasputin is the plague doctor. Except when Grom goes to question Evan Peters, we learn that young Rasputin has been dead for years, and that young Rasputin has been in Evan Peters' head this whole time. Now, Adam, I've gotta ask you: did you completely fall for this, or were you kind of tipped off?
I didn't know. I couldn't have told. I was just like, wait a second, hold on. This guy has been in his head the whole time. I was like, all right, different. This is a different movie now in a lot of ways, because now the things that you've seen that you've thought, and that's, again, I like this as a storytelling element, because we've been told the things that are kind of in his head. Right. Not the actual reality that was there, but the things that were inside his head. That's what we saw throughout all of those conversations and stuff. And so learning that is a great reveal for us, because, we've seen him as different characters. But for whatever reason, the part that surprised me is that, like, I didn't care. I didn't feel like they were screwing me,
No, not at all. It totally works. Like the reveal of this totally works for the movie. And having seen it, because I watched it twice, having seen it, they never tip your hand. Like, they never tell you.
No.
That's kind of the secret to The Sixth Sense, is that there's clues that the second time you watch that movie, you're like, oh, they were telling you the whole time.
Mm-hmm.
But with this movie, they don't. They're not telling you that this guy's fake. And it still works. Like you said, it still totally works.
And then you also kind of get, like, speaking of more Sony, you get a Venom vibe as well at that point, because talking to himself and getting back off board, especially kind of towards the end and stuff like that. But so, yeah.
Well, they're even making the CGI Evan Peters look like, a little bit like Venom.
Yeah.
He's all black and snaky, and his eyes look weird.
Got a stretchy face, kind of.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And this is when we learn that the boy from the beginning of the movie who saved that dog was actually Evan Peters, which also got me. And that the way that he saved the dog from those three boys was by setting those three boys on fire and killing them.
Yeah. So I guess we fight fire with fire in Mother Russia.
It's amazing.
It was really great, though. You're right. It was one of those that, like, when it went back, you're like, oh, it was him. Okay, all right, I like it.
It's just incredible. And we learned that Evan Peters has had a multiple identity disorder his entire life, like even when he was a small child. And it turns out young Rasputin was actually the better imaginary friend. I mean, the kid was real at one point.
Yeah.
But now that he's his imaginary friend, young Rasputin was actually the better imaginary friend, holding back the truly terrible imaginary friend he has, which I also found like, wow, that's great.
Yeah, I'm keeping the worst, personality at bay. Sorry.
Man, so cool, man. Such a cool turn. And this is when Grom shows up, and Evan Peters knocks out Grom, and Grom kills the crooked casino owner and sets him on fire and destroys the casino. And he puts Grom in the plague doctor suit on the roof of the casino.
I thought this was a really cool move.
Totally setting him up. Such a great thing. Like, again, this is your villain being smarter than your hero, which makes for a way better movie.
Yeah, it's just like when you wake up and you're dressed in your enemy's clothes and the police are all looking at you going, all right, give it up. We got you. Wait, what? Hold on now. And you just come out of consciousness like that. That's a scary thought.
It's just so good, man. It's such a great turn. And Smiling Lennon arrests Grom, but Grom breaks out to clear his name, and he gets help from Nerdlinger and Run Lola Reporter, therefore showing character growth that he can actually work as part of a team. Hey. We're in the third act now, baby. And Grom and company go to Evan Peters' office, where there's just a big old Donnybrook between those three and Evan Peters. And Grom uses his thinking powers, and he decides that the best plan of attack is to throw him and himself out a window.
I've gone through every scenario in my head. The only way that I can imagine this working out is me grabbing him and killing ourselves. But at the same time, too, part of me also just goes like, you grabbed the glass every time in all of your thoughts, but like, didn't really use it to the best of the in each particular one. Maybe the first one was good, but
I didn't think about that. You're right.
He kept picking it up. I'm just like, which I thought was a boss move, taking a whole bunch of shattered glass and throwing it in somebody's face like rocks or sand. Ooh,
man, that's a really good idea.
Should have done more. But yet he picks it up every time, but yet neglects to throw it in someone's face. I know it's the motion that's the repeat motion that makes you, once you see that, you go, oh, we're in it again, kind of thing. But I don't know.
And yet nobody dies after they both jump out a window. Nobody dies. Everybody, that's also the kind of movie you're looking at.
Grabbed onto their legs. It's fine.
I know it. Kind of dumb, but okay. That's the movie we've got here, and that's totally fine by me. It's been wonderful so far. This is the biggest problem I had with the movie, and it isn't even that big of a problem. And they got him all tied up in his big old chair there. And Plague Doctor says, I've still won. Everybody thinks you're the Plague Doctor. But man, wouldn't you know it, now that he's part of a team, that Run Lola Reporter been taping the whole time.
Oh, just classic. Like, it's so, like, it's dumb, it's silly, it's cliche, but somehow still works. And I didn't care.
No, not at all, man. And again, a movie like this that is so strange, you do need to have those very familiar beats just to keep going. It really was helpful.
Yeah, it just brings you right back to that, like, oh, yeah, that's right. We are in this type of movie.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And the Plague Doctor gets put into prison because Run Lola Reporter put together a video showing that Evan Peters is in fact the Plague Doctor, and everybody's happy. And Smiling Lennon has to learn to play nice with the local cops, and Run Lola Reporter and Grom totally make out. And as the credits roll, we watch Grom and Nerdlinger solve the case of the 12 missing refrigerators in an animation.
Which is so cool. I love
awesome. That. It is awesome. And that's the end. Or is it? Because during the mid-credit scene, we learn that Evan Peters, the alternate personality, has completely taken over now, and he has a plan to escape. The end.
Well,
is it?
Yeah, or is it? Exactly.
Because during the in-credit scene, we learn that young Rasputin, who we had thought dead for years, is still very much alive.
Okay, I'm glad that you know who that is, because I saw the end and I'm just go like, maybe this is more Russian lore stuff. I don't know who we're talking about. So that was that guy.
He's not made up in the Beetlejuice makeup, so you probably didn't recognize him so much.
I was just like, okay, like I knew we were in some Middle Eastern country because we were told so, because we have hookahs and people with head coverings. That's about as much as you're told. And then they go to this guy and I was just like, all right, who's that cat?
It's
cut
young
to black.
Rasputin.
Okay, there it
Yeah.
makes more sense.
And that's the end. Or is it? Yes, it's actually the end.
But you never know. They may be making another thing to this because I don't know how this.
I
this is
certainly
done,
hope
but
so, Mr. Portress. I'll tell you that right now. I would really like to see another one of these movies.
It was very entertaining, and I feel like you could keep going on with these characters and the same villain and everything. Make it, you got to mix it up, of course. And I
totally. I want to see a
with
different
what
villain. I don't want to see
with
Plague
what
Doctor.
with what they've given us with that, it feels like they've got some probably at least, if not original ideas, great original remixes of ideas, which to me is a new idea.
Yes. Yes.
All right, before we get to our final review of this thing, we got to figure out how in the world this Russian film relates back 1-to-1 with Sylvester Stallone.
Why, thank you, Adam. I have a prepared statement.
Ooh.
Mr. Stallone, hello. It's Shanzi again. And this week's connection to you, because as we all know, every movie ever made can be traced back to you with one element of any movie. And this week's connection is double bass player Steve Mayer.
Huh.
What's a double bass player? How the hell should I know? I'm a former comedian, not a former musician. What I do know is that Steve Mayer has, get ready, 805 credits to his resume.
Jeez.
805. That's a new record for our dumb show.
I think so.
That's the most I've ever found. 805. And the most amazing thing of all of this is that Steve Mayer has been working steady and solidly since 1989 on the totally unfunny comedy starring Sean Penn and Robert De Niro called We're No Angels. Oh, what's that you say, Mr. Stallone? You've never heard of it? Neither has anyone else because it's awful. But that's not the amazing part. The truly, truly incredible thing is that Steve Mayer has been in the movie business for 33 years. He has 805 credits to his resume, and he's only worked with you on the same movie once.
Whew.
That movie, Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2.
Wow.
I know. It's crazy.
Holy cow.
I know. Now, don't get me wrong. I'm forever grateful for this, but
odds.
I would have to because I would have to find some dumb connection that would make people roll their eyes, and I don't want to do that. But how does a guy who has worked on everything only work with you once? Do you not have much of a need for a double bass guy? I could think of a bunch of reasons why I would need a double bass guy, and I don't even have my own soundtrack. But there you go, Mr. Stallone. This week's Stallone connection is double bass player Steve Mayer. I hope to hear from you soon. Your pal, Sweet Shanzi from the internet.
Good old double bass, always twice as good as just plain bass.
Oh,
so much better. Over here at Hero Movie Podcast, we don't do any stars or letters or anything like that. We have our own patented Robin rating system. Now, I'll go first.
Right.
I was shocked. Like
Me
I said,
too.
Bruce came
Shocked.
into this and gave us a thing, for heaven's sakes, called Major Grom Plague Doctor.
It's the worst name for a movie maybe ever.
If someone said, we have a 2.5-hour movie called Major Grom Plague Doctor and it's from Russia, you'd likely put a gun in your mouth. And you should.
It's just awful. But I do have to say I do understand it, because if you're calling him Major Thunder Plague Doctor, that's even worse.
Yeah, I mean, listen, I don't know how you could fix it title wise, but story wise, action wise, I was shocked. It's a little bit like we said, you could cut 30 minutes out of this and it would probably make this movie even better than it already is, but it is quite a good movie. I'm going to go high Tim Drake on this one.
Oh, wow. I for me, again, man, I say this every so often on the show. This is literally the reason why I have a podcast is this movie. This is the hidden gem that no one knows about, and we have found one. Like, this is something where it's like, this is the thing.
I do
If
like
you-
that. That is one of the funnest parts of the show is movies like this that we just go
Yes.
like, what? This is probably going to suck. And then it turns out we found a gem in the rough. And you're right. That is the best thing that we like doing, saying, hey, go look at this. You probably haven't seen it. Grom is not going to, put any butts in seats or anything here, but you need to see this because it's worth seeing. It's very different, but yet somewhat familiar at the same time as well.
This is the best superhero movie I have seen in 2022. It is. And for that, it's a Dick Grayson. For the reason why I have a podcast is for movies like this, is that I did not know. If you were to tell me I was going to watch Major Grom twice when I have no free time, I would have called you insane. But it is just that good, this movie. This movie, like I'm pretty sure I'm going to see this movie again. Because I want to learn how they did that gimbal trick with the 360 from floor to ceiling. I want to know how they did that. And so maybe I'll just watch that sequence again. But my God, man, like the second that starts running up and the music is perfect and the acting is perfect and it's fun and funny and informative. It's what turned this movie from a very good movie into my favorite superhero movie this year.
Well, there you have it, ladies and gentlemen. What other endorsements do you need than that? Check out Major Grom, Plague Doctor, as available on Netflix right now, and that'll do it for this giant episode of Hero Movie Podcast. We did a deep dive on this one, but
I might have overshot because Bruce wasn't here.
That's okay. Listen, honestly, but I think we needed to talk about the stuff that happened in this movie because there's so much of it. B, it's just so bizarre and weird. But like I said, but familiar at the same time. That's what that's what kills me more than anything with this is that like it's new but yet familial, and that's a tough thing to do these days. When especially with people like us who have to watch these things week in and week out for years on end, and to see something that's new and exciting to you, boy, that's a lot of fun.
Yeah.
But we won't be talking about too new. Well, we will be talking new, but maybe not as new. We'll talk about it in just a second. But Sean, where can we find more of your work on the internet?
We have a show called Andor 30 Questions, where each week we answer 30 questions to the latest episode of the Disney Plus series Andor. And there's another show where it just keeps surprising me how good it is.
So yeah, do check us out there. Check out Bruce over at Anime Dad there on YouTube and all that kind of good stuff. Next week, we're going to stay in the international lane here, but one that's probably a little bit more familial to those people out there because it is #1 on Netflix right now. We were a fan of the last one. Enola Holmes 2 is now on Netflix, so we're going to be doing some more international flavor here on HMP next week when we're talking Enola Holmes. That is it, everybody, for the absent Bruce Leslie, Sweet Sean Kovacs. My name's Adam Porters. Stay super, everybody.
Bye, Marty and Evie.
Ground control to Major Grom. Ground control to Major Grom. Take your protein pills and put your helmets on. Ground control to Major Grom. Commencing countdown, engines on. Check ignition and may God's love be with you. This is ground control to Major Grom. You really made the grade. And the papers want to know whose shirt you wear. Now it's time to leave the capsule if you dare. This is Major Grom to ground control. I'm stepping through the door, and I'm floating in the most peculiar way, and the stars look very different today. For here am I sitting in my tin can, far above the world. Planet Earth is blue, and there's nothing I can do. Though I'm just 100,000 miles, I'm feeling very still. And I think my spaceship knows which way to go. Tell my wife I love her very much, she knows. Ground control to Major Grom, your circuit said there's something wrong. Can't you hear me, Major Grom? Can't you hear me, Major Grom? Can't you hear me, Major Grom? Can't you hear? And I'm floating in my tin can.